Tonight on 24, the U.S. president emphasizes overthrowing the Islamic Republic.
We have capability to go far longer than that. We'll do it, whatever.
Trump says the main attacks against the Islamic Republic haven't started yet and will continue until all objectives are achieved. A new wave of intense Israeli and U.S. attacks on military and security centers in Tehran. Police stations and besieged centers are among the targets of the airstrikes. And a crisis in global energy markets after Iran's attacks on Aramco oil facilities in Saudi Arabia and liquefied natural gas in Qatar. With the halt of LNG production in Qatar, gas prices in Europe have gone up by more than 50%. Broadcasting live from the Iran International Studio, this is 24 with Fardad Farahzad. It's breaking news. Hello and good evening to Iran International viewers in Iran and around the world. We're coming on air as the U.S. president says the Iranian government is an intolerable threat to the Middle East and America. According to Donald Trump, the operation against the Islamic Republic is ahead of schedule, and although it was estimated to take 4 to 5 weeks, there's the capability to continue this operation. Hours before this speech, Donald Trump had told CNN that the U.S. military is striking the Islamic Republic, but the big wave hasn't arrived yet, and the United States is also taking other actions to help the people of Iran take control of their country.
And we have the strongest, by far the most powerful armed forces on the face of the earth, so we will easily win and achieve total victory. We are currently running well ahead of our projected schedule to this point, yet should any more time be required to proceed, we can accommodate that without any issues whatsoever. And right from the very start, we had predicted a duration of 4 to 5 weeks, but we possess capabilities, meaning that if we want, we can continue operations much longer than that. Someone said today that, well, President Trump wants to act very quickly because after a while he gets bored. No, I don't get bored. This operation has nothing boring about it. Is this operation boring, Mr. General? No, nothing about it is boring. One of the media outlets said, yeah, President Trump gets bored after a week or two. No, I never get bored. If I easily got bored, I definitely would not be standing here in front of you. Considering what I have endured to finally get here, there's absolutely no way I would stop. Also, we predicted 4 weeks to destroy the military leadership of the Islamic Republic, and you saw that it only took 1 hour, in fact, much earlier than planned.
By a lot.
The Israeli army has also announced that it has so far attacked more than 600 military and security infrastructures of the Islamic Republic, and the country's prime minister has said that the people of Iran are close to the day they can free themselves from the shackles of tyranny. My colleague Reza Mohadis, who has gone to Jerusalem, and Samira Karai from the U.S. State Department are with us. Reza, I'll start with you. How are the conditions on the ground there, now that you've arrived?
Farzad, I can say that not only Jerusalem, where I am, but Israel is experiencing a calm day. Compared to the past day or two when I was in Tel Aviv and the sirens were going off every hour and we were witnessing Islamic Republic missiles being fired towards Israel, today is much better. Let me tell you that there's much more calm prevailing than was imagined. It has now been fully 8 hours since the last emergency siren wailed here in the city of Jerusalem, marking a significant pause. Meanwhile, across the wider nation of Israel, 4 hours have elapsed since the most recent alarm was officially triggered. That specific incident took place in Tel Aviv exactly 4 hours ago, arriving after a previous quiet stretch where absolutely nothing of note had occurred for an additional 4-hour duration. The way the people present here are talking, and I was indeed speaking with them, they were speculating that the Islamic Republic has probably faced a major problem that seems to be of critical importance. In order to effectively neutralize the capacity to utilize their launchers or to launch their missiles, the U.S. Army carried out a strategic operation last night, specifically targeting the Islamic Republic's extensive fortified underground missile bases. However, looking at the situation on the ground, the atmosphere remains remarkably calm and quiet. Life moves forward, even though it is currently hindered by significant restrictions and closures across the area. Just now, the Israeli army issued another statement confirming that these security measures will remain in effect. Currently, only a essential services like educational centers and emergency facilities are operating. Yet normal life persists. As you witnessed yourself, the locals have become accustomed to the conditions of the sirens and simply continue with their daily routines, ignoring the surrounding tension. However, allow me to refer back to the specific remarks that Shlomi Biden, head of Israeli military intelligence, appeared among commanders just minutes ago. In this meeting he had with these intelligence commanders, he again referred to the element of surprise against the Islamic Republic. He said that in these attacks that began on Saturday, we again used the element of surprise. He stated that the attack caught the Islamic Republic completely off guard, leaving them totally unprepared. He further explained that within a mere 40 seconds, 40 high-ranking officials of the regime, most notably their supreme leader, were instantly killed and eliminated during the strike. He mentioned the operation will continue. He mentioned that last night they achieved some big goals, and he announced that this operation will again continue. Let me just mention Benjamin Netanyahu's comments. He too, in his remarks today when he was in Beit Shemesh, where 9 people were killed yesterday by Islamic Republic missiles. He mentioned there and said that we're going to create conditions so that the brave people of Iran can, be saved from the Islamic Republic's tyranny. He stressed that the day the Iranian people can finally achieve this is super, super close. Moreover, Israel and America are actively making it even closer for them. When that inevitable day arrives and people hit the streets, he assured everyone that Israel and the United States of America will be right there, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Iranian people.
Honestly, Samara, the US president is now practically talking about causing a major regime change in Iran. Meanwhile, the Secretary of War claims these attacks aren't technically for regime change, but if you listen to the gist of what he was saying, it seems obvious that the ultimate outcome is totally going to be regime change.
So really, the main gist of what both of them are saying is that the ultimate result is definitely going to be regime change. It was really obvious at one point during the press conference Mr. Hexes held this morning at 8 a.m. when he was just about to talk about the Islamic Republic. He actually went ahead and used the term former regime, meaning the previous regime. It's almost as if in Mr. Hexes' world, they should all be using words like former or previous right now whenever they are referring to the Islamic Republic. Mr. Trump, had already spoken on the phone with a couple of major American media outlets just yesterday, and today he also talked on the phone with CNN, specifically with Jake Tapper, the famous CNN host. He said about their military operations that their attacks are really continuing intensely right now, but they haven't, actually launched that big main operation yet. This conversation with Jake Tapper had a really important point, about the internal situation, how are people doing inside Iran and what's up with the protests? Because Mr. Trump, well, for the past month or two, it's true there was a bit of a break, but he had talked about the protests. The point where they started bringing military equipment to the region was, after the protests inside Iran and after people were killed inside Iran. When they questioned him about this specific strategy, he answered, yeah, besides the standard military stuff, we are actively taking actions inside Iran right now. But he emphasized that currently it's just not a safe environment for regular people to come out. People should really stay indoors to remain safe, he urged. And then he talked about and, referred to that heavy wave they have coming. But overall, what you're referring to as regime change, while it's clear in Mr. Trump's statements and also in what Miss Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House spokesperson, has, written on Twitter. And most importantly, what Hexes, as the Secretary of War, has someone who's considered all these different scenarios the U.S. has for how the operation will go. And all these talks, you can totally see that what they're dealing with is 47 years of the Islamic Republic's terrorist actions. When Mr. Trump gave his speech, an hour after the attack, he started with a whole American hostage thing and went way back in history. And in all these 50-something hours, they've been talking about the Islamic Republic's actions over these 47 years. Not just about one operation, and not just about it being, a nuclear issue, where we don't want you to have nuclear weapons. Here and there throughout the media, they're talking about American soldiers losing their lives in Iraq. Specifically, Mr. Hexes himself, speaking as a veteran who was in Afghanistan and saw firsthand what happened in Iraq, understands the gravity. When he addressed the soldiers today, in his press conference, he was talking about this whole operation as a really important defining mission in these soldiers' lives, saying effectively, you guys have been trained and educated your whole lives to stand here ready for this moment and not be scared. Let's hear him.
This isn't Iraq or Afghanistan. I fought in both. Our president, he knows what he's doing. He himself said that the whole idea of nation building is like a foolish idea. This is like totally the opposite of that. This specific operation is definitely a really clear, incredibly decisive, and, a very precise and targeted mission. We're going to destroy their nuclear force, their missile force, and their naval force. And Israel is, helping us too. We're really grateful for this capable partner we have. Capable partners are like always good partners.
The end of this operation, tomorrow, Mr. Hexas says, will be like totally up to one person, and that's Mr. Trump. Mr. Trump, mentioned 4 weeks for the operation these days. Yesterday, he said 4 to 5 weeks. Once again today, in the speech he delivered just like an hour or two ago, he brought out this whole 4-week timeline thing. What they projected, predicted time-wise, is essentially these 4 weeks. Mr. Hexas also briefly mentioned it earlier today. But both of them really emphasize the fact that they will keep the operation going for as long as it takes until they get what they want and their operational goal is, finally met. This goal might, be fully achieved in 3 more weeks, or it could potentially take us another 2 full months. About setting a timeline, Mr. Hexas told reporters we're not doing that. Or regarding whether they would potentially send ground forces into Iran, he got frustrated again. He actually told the reporter, "Are you even listening to what I'm saying?" He emphasized that they are simply not, going to reveal any specific part of their military operations or their classified strategy. We are definitely not telling anyone the things our enemy wants to hear. We will do absolutely whatever it takes to, successfully reach those specific operational goals of ours. Meanwhile, looking ahead to tomorrow, tensions remain exceptionally high throughout the region. Just minutes ago, I observed that 2 independent maritime sources are reporting a drone attack targeting an oil tanker named Athena. Amidst these volatile circumstances, Mr. Trump has also spoken directly with the King of Jordan to discuss the ongoing crisis. NATO is saying, its Secretary General, Mr. Rutte, is saying that Europeans and European leaders are standing behind Mr. Trump's decision. Another front has opened up in northern Israel with Hezbollah in Lebanon. We have all these tensions, and when they asked Mr. Trump this morning what was strange or surprising for him in these 50-something hours, he says it's the Islamic Republic's attack on the Arab countries in the region, which they hadn't predicted, and he described this as the surprise of this operation.
Thank you. Thank you to both of you. Samira Garai at the U.S. State Department in Washington, D.C. Reza Mohaddis, my other colleague, from Jerusalem. Our reporters from the United States to the Middle East are on standby, ready at any moment to bring you the latest. As mentioned earlier, a press conference was held an hour ago at the Pentagon to detail U.S. military actions against the Islamic Republic. The U.S. Secretary of War emphasized that one of the military's current goals is the destruction of Iran's drones, missiles, and nuclear program, rather than an exercise in establishing democracy in another country.
We will target their missiles, drones, and entire program. Operating under our own conditions, this endeavor will not become a swamp of nation-building or country-making, nor an exercise in democracy-making, and it certainly will not be about adhering to strict standards of political correctness. We are not wasting time, nor are we putting anyone's life in danger. Well, of course, President Trump warned that there would be casualties, because war is hell, and realistically, it always will be.
General David Petraeus, former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, and one of the most prominent contemporary military strategists, has joined us from Washington, D.C. General, thank you for accepting our invitation. Just as the Islamic Republic had promised, it has regionalized the war. Now from the Arabian Sea to the Eastern Mediterranean, 11 countries have been subjected to missile and drone attacks by the Islamic Republic. Maybe Tehran doesn't have much to lose, but the countries in the region and America's allies have a lot to lose. How much do you think the Islamic Republic has the capability to continue this barrage?
I think this is one of the main questions we have right now, and that's what CENTCOM is trying to answer. America and Israel have significantly undermined Iran's ability to launch retaliatory strikes. Confirming this trend, and as one of your reporters mentioned, the volume of active attacks hitting Israeli soil and other regional locations appears to have decreased noticeably during the previous 12 to 24 hours. But, well, it's still too early to judge whether this will be weakened further, or if they can increase the volume again. But what's clear is that Iran has made the decision to... The objective is to not just go after U.S. bases and Israeli targets, but to even hit the Gulf Cooperation Council countries and various other nations located throughout the entire region. Even if these countries didn't allow the U.S. to use their bases, which, to be honest, is a huge miscalculation on Iran's part. Because what they've done is brought other countries into the field of this war. Nations that had previously struggled to maintain neutrality and avoid entanglement in this conflict now find themselves effectively forced to intervene. They are currently compelled to provide defensive aerial assistance to the mission, yet there is a distinct possibility they will eventually transition into an offensive phase, joining American and Israeli forces in combat.
Although the United States has frequently asserted that it does not seek regime change, the tangible reality created by these ongoing attacks has effectively removed all other possibilities, leaving the complete removal of the current leadership as the only viable option.
Well, a wide variety of objectives have recently been brought up. This approach definitely involves a significant weakening of their offensive missile and drone capabilities, including their production facilities, to clear the path for destroying all of the remaining Iranian nuclear infrastructure. Just as we saw a few days ago, the International Atomic Energy Agency said that those 60% enriched stockpiles might be in tunnels under Isfahan, and it seems that B-2 bombers, which can penetrate deep underground very well, have targeted these again with great precision. President Trump explicitly spoke about destroying Iran's navy today, and naturally, he also discussed plans for destroying and significantly weakening the regime's entire leadership hierarchy, ranging from the supreme leader himself down to their various intelligence forces and their operational headquarters. When we put all of this together, we see there are thousands of targets they've hit so far, and the president, in his initial remarks before the start of this campaign, expressed a desire for regime change too, but he said that the Iranian people should be the ones to do it. Now that the Americans and Israelis are creating the necessary conditions for this to happen.
General Petraeus, now countries like Saudi Arabia are saying they're ready to even take offensive actions. I know that the Persian Gulf countries are very frustrated with the waves of attacks from the Islamic Republic. How likely do you see this possibility, especially now that Iran has also targeted a British base in Cyprus, which is considered British soil, that a larger coalition will form, including Britain, and perhaps Saudi Arabia and the Emiratis will also join these attacks?
I believe we could envision a broad coalition where major powers like the French and Germans join forces with Britain from outside the area, while simultaneously every single country located within the region finds a way to contribute to this alliance. I'm not sure that this necessarily means participating in offensive operations, but I am confident that all of them will participate in the ongoing defensive efforts. We certainly should not forget that all these countries possess robust anti-air and anti-missile defenses, which were originally provided to them by the United States. Furthermore, all these capabilities are fully integrated into the comprehensive United States Air and Missile Defense Program, a strategic network that is currently deployed throughout the entire Gulf region. We also distinctly know that we have advanced U.S. THAAD or Patriot missile defense batteries, positioned strategically, along with multiple guided missile destroyers operating in the region. Consequently, we maintain the functional equivalent of the Patriot system on these very destroyers. Furthermore, there are combat aircraft flying with the specific capability to, again, track and intercept some of these hostile missiles heading towards allied nations like Israel or the Gulf countries.
General Petraeus, many consider the issue of the Islamic Republic a Pandora's box that perhaps no other U.S. president in these decades dared to open. Now, for whatever reason, this box has been opened, and we know that the Islamic Republic has had and continues to have impacts far beyond its borders, from political Islam to its proxy groups in the region. What kind of Middle East do you think the potential fall of the Islamic Republic will present us with?
Well, it's hard for me to imagine us seeing anything worse than this, worse than the Iranian regime in the future, and many in the region are also willing to take that risk. The most critical question remains exactly who will be Khamenei's next successor. As we know, there's currently a Provisional Leadership Council consisting of 3 people: the head of the judiciary, the president, and 1 member of the Guardian Council. These 3 need to sit down. Well, maybe it's not safe for them right now, but they need to sit together and choose the next leader. Will this next leader of the Islamic Republic prove to be a much-needed pragmatist seeking reform, or will the regime select another rigid ideological hardliner, one who is fully prepared to continue down the destructive path that has already dragged Iran into this deep, dangerous abyss of crushing economic and political isolation? It is important to remember that since 1979, economists have estimated that the Iranian rial has plummeted, losing 99% of its total value. This is in a country that has the world's 2nd largest natural gas reserves, the world's 3rd largest oil reserves, and an educated population with an incredible civilization. They themselves created this calamity for themselves. Will this next leader have the courage to say, yes, look, the pressing question remains, will they finally admit our nuclear program and arming proxy forces have been disastrous and we are stopping? Or will they instead continue down the same entrenched path that we have consistently seen under the first 2 leaders of the Islamic Republic?
General, you are in an exceptional position, combining a military background with intelligence experience. As the former head of the CIA, since you mentioned the issue of leadership in Iran on the political side, I want to ask you this. There's a lot of speculation right now about what will happen the day after the overthrow of the Islamic Republic. One of the names that comes up a lot is Prince Reza Pahlavi, whose father also had very good relations with the United States of America before the 1979 revolution. I can guess that when you were at the CIA, you studied various opposition groups extensively. How seriously do you see his chances? How much do you think he can create a transition between the Islamic Republic and the next government?
I had a conversation with him just a week or 2 ago while we were at the Munich Security Conference. As you are doubtless aware, he has publicly issued a comprehensive transition plan. This strategic document explicitly outlines the events of an ideal scenario while carefully charting the specific course required to successfully establish a legitimate democratically elected government for the nation. I currently view him as a figure holding immense symbolic value, primarily because he stands as the defining representation of opposition against the current ruling regime. His prominent name undoubtedly carries a certain historical weight, yet he himself is fully aware that at best he can serve merely as a temporary transitional leader. He recognizes that the ultimate decision regarding the country's future must come directly from the Iranian people through a legitimate democratic election. This is precisely what he himself has clearly outlined within his own report, and he, of course, is certainly not looking to completely dismantle or destroy every single existing component of the current regime. This is a wise choice if we preserve parts of the institutions and individuals. We know we learned this lesson in Iraq during the invasion of Iraq. It was a foolish mistake on our part to dissolve the entire Ba'athist armed forces without telling them how they could now earn a living for themselves and their families. And we went and dissolved all the Ba'athists, who were bureaucrats needed to run the country, and sent them all home. I think the current U.S. administration understands this. Of course, they haven't ruled out the presence of U.S. ground troops in Iran, but, well, it won't be the likely or preferred option. The critical inquiry remains, who possesses the necessary pragmatism, bravery, and charisma within Iran, perhaps even emerging from the current administration, to lead a decisive movement? Such a figure must be compelling enough to persuade key security forces to defect from the entrenched hardliners. By capitalizing on the widespread public animosity toward the leadership, this individual would need to organize these defecting units to effectively dismantle the existing power structure and ultimately overthrow the regime. A regime that has significantly harmed its people, neighbors, Americans, and others.
Since you mentioned deploying ground forces, a lot of people are asking what will happen on the ground in the 90th minute. The US government seems to place special emphasis on the actions of people on the ground, even leading the president to ask Iranian protesters to, at some stage, take over their institutions. We appear to be seeing a hybrid revolutionary war on the ground. How much does such an experience even exist in the past? And you, who are a strategist yourself, have intelligence experience, military experience. How possible do you see it for an army to attack from the air and then for protesting people on the ground to change the government?
خب صادقانه بگم واقعیت تلخ در موارد اینچنینی اغلب اینه که بیشتر کسانی که بیشترین قدرت رو بیشترین اراده رو دارن و حاضرن که بیرحم باشن با مردم خودشون معمولا پیروز میشن. با وجود این مثال‌های موفقی بوده، به عنوان مثال انقلاب‌های رنگی در پی سقوط شوروی و سقوط فروپاشی دیوار برلین رو شاهد بودیم. شماری از جمهوری‌های سابق شوروی و کشورهای عضو پیمان ورشو رو داشتیم که مردم خودشون اومدن و حاکمان خودکامه خودشون رو ساقط کردن. این عبارت هایبرید یا هیبرید که شما ذکر کردین درسته، ولی خب به هر حال باید که بخش‌هایی از نیروهای رژیم به هر حال گسست اینها رو شاهد باشیم از جانب از طرف رژیم و بخش‌هایی از رهبری ارشد رژیم به این نتیجه برسن که مومنتوم و وضعیت به نفعشون نیست و در نهایت باید که جدا بشن از رژیم.
We've talked a lot about Iran, General. I want to ask you about the bigger picture in the Middle East. Right now, as we speak, the Israeli army is targeting Hezbollah positions in Lebanon. The Islamic Republic has nourished many of these regional proxy Islamist groups. How much do you think the fall of the Islamic Republic will change all the equations in the region? Will it perhaps increase Israel's hegemony in contrast to other powers like Turkey and Qatar? And how much is there a risk that the Islamic Republic could transform from a state actor into a non-state actor, similar to Al-Qaeda or ISIS?
خب چند تا سوال اینجا مطرح کردین. در وهله اول فکر میکنم که نیابتی ها براشون خیلی دشوار باشه که کارشون ادامه بدن بدون کمک ایران، حالا چه اسلحه باشه، چه آموزش باشه، منابع مالی باشه و حتی مواد منفجره. فراموش نکنید که صدها آمریکایی رو در طول عملیات سرج در عراق، افزایش نیروی ما در عراق که من اونجا خدمت میکردم، کشتن به واسطه همین مواد منفجره و بمب‌های کنار جاده‌ای که ایران اینها رو میداد به شبه نظامی. این فقط یکی از بسیاری از مثال هاست که در اون حزب الله یا حماس یا حوثی ها یا باز شبه نظامیان شیعه در عراق یا حتی بازیگران سوری. فراموش نکنیم یکی از تغییراتی که از زمان حملات وحشتناک 7 اکتبر اتفاق افتاد ساقط شدن رژیم قاتل بشار اسد بوده. حزب الله به ویژه فشار بسیار زیادی رو دارن تحمل میکنن. من واقعا خودم تعجب کردم که اونها علیه اسرائیل اقدام کردن اخیراً که این تبدیل شد به کاتالیزوری که اسرائیل از اونها انتقام بگیره و احتمالاً بخشی از نیروی هوایی مستقر روی ناو هواپیمابر جرالد فورد که الان در شرق مدیترانه است الان علیه حزب الله هم استفاده بشه، به اضافه کاری که خواهند کرد در مورد جمهوری اسلامی. اما در مورد خود ایران ببینید، اگر ایران دیگه یک رژیم انقلابی نباشه و به این نتیجه برسه که خیلی بهتر میتونه به مردم خودش خدمت کنه و به منطقه کمک کنه یعنی راضی باشه از مرزهای خودش، از نفوذ خودش و حداکثر استفاده رو از این منابع عظیمی که موهبت‌های عظیمی که ایران ازشون برخورداره که متاسفانه دهه‌ها اینها رو هدر دادن. ببینید چه کار میتونن بکنن اینها با دومین ذخایر گاز جهان، سومین ذخایر نفت جهان، یک جمعیت بسیار تحصیل کرده، جمعیت جوان، کشور بزرگ، بازار عظیم. به جای این سوء مدیریت وحشتناک اقتصاد و همه این فعالیت‌های خطرناک و زیانبارشون در گذشته
who brought Iran to this kind of situation. Just think how incredible such a transformation could be for the people of Iran, for Iran as a country, a nation, and really for the entire region and the rest of the world. Because, well, we know that the Quds Forces operatives have been active in Europe, they've been active in Latin America, and they've even tried to be active in the United States.
Thank you, General David Petraeus, former director of the CIA and prominent military strategist, joining us from Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. On the third day of the joint U.S.-Israeli operation against the Islamic Republic, widespread air attacks have continued targeting Tehran and other cities this past hour. Reports indicate that massive explosions have occurred in the east, west, north, and central areas of Tehran, and Basij bases, police stations, and the police command were among the targets of these attacks. The Iranian Red Crescent announced at least 131 cities were targeted in attacks.
Sit down! Sit down! Ooh. Take cover inside!
It's coming this way now. Dad, shrapnel will hit your face. Shrapnel incoming.
I'm sitting! I'm sitting! Sit down! Sit down! Sit down! Sit! Coming!
What video are you filming?
Sit down!
It was Monday, the 11th of Esfand, at the Sanandaj Police Command headquarters. They've put up some sheds here. And some, I think, are command buildings and stuff. It hit here. These are organizational too, but one hit.
That was close. We were so close.
You dropped me off and then stayed in the car?
What is it? It's on Telegani Street. Telegani Street. Matahari Street again. Now it hit that same spot again. They hit all around us. Look over there. It only hit 3 spots there.
Journalist Reza Haji Husseini joined from Malmo. Mr. Haji Husseini, we are focusing a lot on the countries in the region and the Islamic Republic's attacks, but the reality is that the main war is inside Iran, and naturally, due to the lack of reporters on the ground and widespread internet outages, access to information is very difficult. However, even from the limited images that are reaching us, it seems that the scale of the bombing is very extensive.
Regarding the situation in Tehran, at least, the same conclusion can be drawn considering the powerful accounts that exist and are currently being published within the very videos that you have recently broadcast on your program. Addressing the final point raised, the specific citizen recording the footage explicitly claims they hit all around us, a sentiment currently echoed by numerous other eyewitness accounts emerging from the scene. It appears that strategic centers containing significant military installations, most notably including the Nobanyang district, have indeed been subjected to heavy targeting operations throughout the course of the day. Various accounts confirm that the blast, particularly given the sheer intensity of the explosion there, was powerful, enough to immediately draw people's attention. In another significant instance, a building located in Normak was specifically targeted, resulting in a situation where internal documents from the site have ultimately reached the hands of citizens, which serves as clear evidence to demonstrate that this specific building was indeed included among the properties that were officially identified as belonging to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and documents of an IRGC cyber unit, which was actually the head of the Shahid Babai group. Milad Mansouri's name was visible in them, and even the United States has offered rewards for members of this group. These critical details emerged directly as a result of this significant explosion, and we have positively identified that this specific group operated under the moniker known as Cyber Avengers. The complex series of developments, especially given the sheer intensity of these attacks, is unfolding even as the US president cautioned in a CNN interview that we have not yet reached the main wave, or the fundamental attack intended, suggesting the primary offensive is still to come. And while it remains unclear with exactly what specific intensity that attack will be carried out, but just as I previously mentioned, and you yourself also correctly pointed out, the accumulation of witness accounts indicates that in numerous cities, and perhaps most notably in Tehran, the intensity of the fire is undeniably severe. It is therefore evident that our fellow citizens in Iran are currently living through the harsh realities of a full-blown war situation.
What were most of the targets they bombed, as far as we know? What kind of headquarters were they?
Significantly, the targets have now become granular, that is, after the January crackdown. Perhaps I want to use this phrase to explain it. It's as if these suppressors are being pursued and targeted street by street. It is well understood that the strategic centers targeted during the operation were impacted to such a degree that these forces, particularly the elite special units, practically lost their ability to be stationed in proper facilities. As a result, they were effectively displaced, leaving them either scattered across the city streets or ultimately compelled to erect temporary tents to maintain their operations. Judiciary centers were also specifically targeted during the conflict. This has happened in various cities throughout the region. Furthermore, of course, major military installations were struck, particularly in cities and strategic locations where military activities were significantly more prominent and extensive. Although specific sites were targeted, one must consider the substantial emphasis placed beforehand on the prediction that the people would eventually seize control of the situation and actively enter the field. Consequently, the deliberate targeting of the siege bases and police stations, particularly within the capital of Tehran, could represent a truly significant inflection point. This development suggests that the anticipated escalation is materializing exactly where it matters most, signaling a critical shift in the overall security dynamic. Naturally, there are indeed similar instances occurring along the border regions where, in reality, the specific bases that were previously responsible for maintaining border control are now being actively targeted by these attacks. Well, at this stage, we are compelled to wait and see, particularly when considering the specific point Trump has raised again, and his Secretary of War has also brought up that ground forces might potentially enter Iran. We must now determine to what extent targeting these forward border bases can effectively serve that strategic goal or prepare the ground for it.
Thank you. Reza Haji Hosseini, a journalist from Malmo, is with us. In the past few minutes, the U.S. Central Command, CENTCOM, has said that a squadron of FA-18 fighter jets from the United States military is currently conducting operations over Iranian airspace. At the same time, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman held a formal telephone consultation with the President of the Russian Federation concerning the Islamic Republic's strikes on Aramco facilities. This call is crucial because Riyadh has previously signaled that the kingdom might consider substantial retaliatory measures to address these continuous threats to its energy security. The French president also held separate calls an hour ago with leaders of the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Qatar to discuss Iran and Middle East security. Meanwhile, the NATO Secretary General stated the alliance has no plans to become involved in a conflict with Iran. Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State is scheduled to appear before the U.S. Congress in a few minutes to discuss the details of the attack on Iran with American lawmakers. Marco Rubio, even before the attack, had informed a number of Congress members about the attack on Iran by holding a similar meeting. My colleagues Niloufar Ibrahim from the IAEA in Vienna and Marzieh Hosseini from the US Congress are with me. Marzieh, I'll start with you. What is the mood in Congress and the reaction to the war between the US, Israel, and the Islamic Republic?
In about 2 hours, tomorrow, almost all of Mr. Trump's cabinet is scheduled to descend here at Congress for an emergency and confidential meeting. Mr. Marco Rubio will be present at this meeting, Mr. Pete Hegseth, Mr. Dan Crenshaw, and the CIA director, Mr. Ratcliffe, are the individuals who are going to brief and explain to senior members of the U.S. Congress about this ongoing operation. This is the second meeting. Yesterday, too, a 90-minute session was specifically held by the Pentagon for U.S. lawmakers. And tomorrow, too, a general session is scheduled to be held for all more than 600 U.S. lawmakers. This is very important news here in Congress. Reactions are very divided. If I want to simplify it a lot, I'd say a quarter of the U.S. Congress is strongly against this attack, using very illegal war rhetoric. But the rest, meaning 3/4, are people who either support it or don't have a very opposing stance. It also refers to the Democratic Party, where a split has formed. Those who are, in fact, more right-leaning are actually showing more opposition compared to those who are more left-leaning. I correct myself. They are showing more opposition, although some who come from competitive electoral districts try not to use very anti-war rhetoric, but they are demanding more transparency. But there's a common thread. There's a strong effort being made to, in fact, exploit it for the upcoming elections by Democrats. They're trying to contradict Trump's America First slogan. But it seems that so far, there isn't much of a problem with this ongoing war itself among Democrats. This is what's been heard from their speeches and statements so far. But there are two major concerns. One thing I just heard from one of the reporters, who apparently also heard it from the Confidential Intelligence Committee of Congress. The issue of concern for Congress right now is that apparently, if this war goes beyond Mr. Trump's timeline, meaning 4 to 5 weeks, the shortage of U.S. weapons in the region is very worrying. Apparently, U.S. allies will not receive extensive military equipment support at this time. In the U.S. Congress, there is concern that if this war drags on, American soldiers will likely face risk, even though Mr. Trump has claimed we are ahead of our timeline. The issue involves American soldiers setting foot on Iranian soil, a topic even some Republicans oppose. Mr. Trump said today he does not rule out this option, despite hesitation from members of his own party.
Niloufar, this is one of the biggest crises right now in the area of nuclear programs. How are things there at the International Atomic Energy Agency? How are they following the war situation?
Yes, they held an emergency meeting today. Although Iran and Russia expected a focus on Iran, the agency's Director General ultimately expressed broader concerns regarding the situation. Concern that other countries in the region that are being targeted by Iran's attacks will become a cause for worry, and that's because they all have active nuclear programs. They currently possess active nuclear reactors, alongside extensive fuel storage facilities. Consequently, should these sensitive sites be subjected to an attack, there would be immediate and severe risks involving the release of hazardous nuclear or radioactive radiation. And the specific fact that Iran ultimately didn't agree to a deal, refused to yield to any binding agreement, and consequently caused this war to come about, really seemed to have deeply upset and visibly worried congratulate the Director General of the agency, at least from our perspective. And he also talked about that specific matter right here. Besides that, we know that various European countries are now also very much involved. France's president tonight, for the third time, for the third consecutive night, is holding a crisis meeting or an emergency security and defense cabinet meeting to review the situation. And as you mentioned, he's also constantly in talks with regional and European leaders. We can say, for example, the foreign minister has put aside other plans. He also had a crisis meeting today because of not only the situation of European citizens who are stuck in these countries in the region, or are worried about how they can get out or avoid being targeted by attacks. In fact, the military bases established by European countries in the region have also now emerged as a significant source of concern. This specific issue presents a significant cause for concern not only for France, but equally for Italy, and potentially extends to Spain or Great Britain. For today, we heard a lot about Cyprus, given that there was also an attack on one of Britain's bases in Cyprus. Cyprus explicitly stated that it has petitioned the British government to strictly limit a base's operations to humanitarian aid, ensuring no combat missions originate there. Mr. Starmer says such a thing will happen, and he will not, in fact, allow the United States to use this base for attacks. The Islamic Republic has also explicitly issued threats to target this specific military base. On the other hand, we know that Spain has said it will not allow the United States to use the base it has in Spain on Spanish soil for a joint attack with Israel on the Islamic Republic. So we see that now a lot of conflicts or a lot of discussions are being raised that aren't just related to these attacks themselves. In French territory, or example, French security services now have a concern that the Islamic Republic might want to carry out actions inside French territory. Alternatively, forces and supporters of the Islamic Republic, having established secret or dormant networks over the years, which still exist, could potentially seek to launch attacks against designated targets, from opponents of the Islamic Republic on European soil to, for example, attacks on Jewish sites, which, according to some experts, would also be a very easy action for them. So we see that what they now have to think about has gone beyond war. It's extended to their daily issues, and it seems they can't just easily ignore it now, and must think of long-term solutions for it.
Thank you to both of you. Niloufar Pour Ibrahim from the IAEA headquarters in Vienna, and Marzieh Hosseini from the U.S. Congress in Washington, D.C. Bloomberg has reported that after Qatar halted its reduction of liquefied natural gas (LNG), gas prices in Europe have increased by over 50%. Following Iran's attack on Qatar's energy facilities, which cover about 1/5 of the global LNG supply, the country announced an hour ago that it has halted production. With Qatar's unprecedented halt in LNG production, global energy security is now facing a major threat. University of Texas financial economics lecturer and researcher Siamak Javadi joined us. Mr. Javadi, it's not just Qatar's LNG either. The Islamic Republic has also targeted Aramco facilities in Saudi Arabia. What does this mean for energy markets?
Look, with greetings and salutations to all viewers and the brave and courageous people inside the country. Look, anyway, it was predictable that the Islamic Republic would make such a move. These guys, they said right at the beginning, too, that we would escalate this military intervention and this war, and we would expand it to the region. But if you now, aside from the increase in energy prices, which, well, naturally is normal because of a shock we have to supply, this is happening. If you look at the financial and monetary markets, the pricing is very interesting. For example, the US stock market, first thing in the morning when it opened, had a slight dip, and at this moment that I'm speaking with you, all of that loss has been recovered. You are currently witnessing a consistent trend and pattern emerging across almost all financial markets worldwide. It appears that the pricing of this ongoing war and associated geopolitical instability is perceived from the viewpoint of global investors to be nothing more than a short-term and ultimately manageable risk. This remains true for the time being.
However, the market's reaction is not always strictly based on the specific events unfolding on the ground. It's not like that. After all, these concerns are continuing. Right now, there are reports being published on Al Jazeera that the Islamic Republic has also targeted some oil tankers in the Persian Gulf or the Sea of Oman. If this extends, where days turn into weeks and weeks turn into months, what consequences could potentially arise?
Exactly. Look, financial and monetary markets are generally forward-looking. They discount information. This behavioral pattern that we're seeing today is based on information that's publicly available and that we're seeing. Now, should this conflict escalate beyond our current expectations, or if unforeseen events occur that we did not anticipate, well, naturally, both financial and monetary markets will react appropriately to those specific and unfolding events. My assessment is that given that the Islamic Republic has now come and is targeting residential areas and public areas, and, well, basically the infrastructure of neighboring countries that had nothing to do with this conflict. In my opinion, now a general consensus will emerge that this regime, whose absolute evil has become clear to everyone, should be dealt with completely with full force before it can cause more harm to the countries in the region. Anyway, consider that China will also be harmed in the middle of this. East Asian countries will also be harmed. South Korea will also be harmed by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Meaning, almost the entire world's interests lie in a serious confrontation with the Islamic Republic, and for this war to end as soon as possible. And in such a way that the Islamic Republic no longer has the ability to seek revenge. In alignment with this trend, we also see that America has now very purposefully targeted the IRGC Navy, and I think, as we speak, they have successfully hit and sunk 9 distinct IRGC ships, frigates, and vessels as part of the offensive. I think this trend will continue until the control of the Strait of Hormuz is completely in the hands of American and Israeli forces. I'm saying the current assessment is that financial markets see this risk as short-term and just a shock. It won't be more than that. Now we'll have to see what happens in the coming days.
Mr. Javadi, the Persian Gulf countries, especially the Cooperation Council, are among the most conservative governments in the world. They don't want any concerns to affect their markets, their people. Security is a very high priority for them. A Persian proverb states, when water passes over your head, it doesn't matter if it's 1 inch or 100. Do you think we've entered that situation now? Meaning, this continued escalation of tension by the Islamic Republic won't even cause the Persian Gulf countries to back down anymore?
It seems that way, meaning based on the documents that are now in the public domain, we now know we're moving in that direction. Before that, for example, it seemed like Saudi Arabia wasn't in favor of this conflict, but later we realized, no, Saudi Arabia is completely in favor of this conflict. My assumption is that given that Qatar has now announced that it has shot down 2 Islamic Republic bombers, the United Arab Emirates generally has a very serious trade relationship with Israel and has been targeted, and Saudi Arabia, well, naturally, as the leader of Arab countries, its own Aramco has been targeted, and it also knew the nature of the Islamic Republic. My assessment is that the Persian Gulf countries might not cooperate directly, but they will definitely, behind the scenes, provide intelligence, military cooperation, as they say, forces, and equipment and help in this direction, meaning they will make this decision, in my opinion. This consensus is forming. You even see this happening more or less in France. Germany has made such a statement. I'm saying it seems to me that this global consensus is happening, that the Islamic Republic must be dealt with decisively before it wants to challenge the world's energy security and, well, basically the world's economy.
Thank you, Siamak Javadi, lecturer and researcher of financial economics, University of Texas. We referred to the unrest and tension in the region. Before the end of the program, we have a short opportunity to see images of the flight situation in the region. As you can see, the skies over Iran, Iraq, Syria, and many other countries in the region are completely empty of commercial flights. The United Arab Emirates today reactivated several flights from Etihad, Fly Dubai, and Emirates to evacuate a number of citizens who are stranded in the country. Thank you for watching 24 Tonight. Iran International's special coverage will continue in the hours ahead.